This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast.
The Hidden Killers Podcast.
With Tony Bruschi.
Taking a look back at some of the most compelling testimony in the trial of Lori Vallow Daybell. And I want to look back on this one because this was particularly gripping testimony. I think when you're hearing from the former friends that have a real inside perspective, it really, I don't know, it paints a very more detailed look at trying to understand the thinking of Lori Vallow Daybell. This is testimony from April Raymond earlier in the trial. Take a listen.
All right, now that the witness has been sworn, I've been asking each witness because there's a rule called the exclusionary rule that allows for witnesses to not be permitted to review or listen to other testimony during trial. So I've been asking each witness because we've got multiple viewing locations for the court, so we're not always clear on who may be observing trial testimony, and that would apply to those witnesses that are going to be providing testimony in the case. With this particular witness, the state, and I very much appreciate you bringing it to my attention before just asking the question, that there may have been some exposure to pretrial testimony, but I'm not sure if there was. So perhaps just to get started, Ms. Smith, if you'd like to make an inquiry in that regards and see what this witness may have been exposed to before coming in to testify today.
Thank you, Your Honor. And I don't believe I'm not sure how much of this was on the record before. In pretrial preparation, the witness mentioned that she had received a message, and just in an abundance of caution, we brought that to the attention of the court. But for the record, ma'am, will you state your name and spell your last name for the court reporter, please?
Sure. My name is April Raymond, Raymond.
Okay. And in pretrial preparation, myself and Lieutenant Ron Ball and one of the lead prosecutors, Rob Wood, met with you, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And did we mention to you the exclusionary rule that you're not allowed to listen to any of the testimony?
Yes.
Okay. Have you listened to any of the testimony?
No, I have not.
Okay. Have you reviewed anybody's testimony from the courtroom?
No, I have not.
Have we reviewed any of the evidence that has appeared in this courtroom in this trial?
No, I have not.
Okay. Can you tell us about a messenger you received, and then tell us whether that had any impact on your testimony here today?
It was just a Facebook message forwarding an interview from Justin Lum with a member of Ms. Vallow's family.
Okay. And you received a Facebook messenger of an interview from journalist Justin Lum?
I did.
Okay.
Could you spell the journalist's name again, last name?
I believe it's L-U-M. He's a journalist out of Arizona, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And can you say a member of whose family? I apologize. I know you said, but I forgot.
So it was an interview with Lori's cousin that wasn't, I don't believe it was just an interview that the reporter did independently, not involving this proceeding.
Okay. And that interview was not about this trial itself or witness testimony?
No, it was not.
Okay. I haven't watched the whole thing. Was there anything in that interview by Mr. Lum of the defendant's cousin talking about the evidence in this trial occurring now in Boise?
Honestly, I didn't complete the entire interview. I saw maybe 2 minutes of it. I didn't watch the whole interview. So what I saw did not have anything to do with what's been happening. And with clarification from you and your team, I understood that it really didn't have anything to do with the exclusionary clause.
Okay. But did you follow up on it, look at it? Did you do anything else with that link?
No, I did not.
Okay. Have you looked at any other links about the trial testimony in this case?
No, I have not.
Okay. Anything about the evidence offered in this case?
No.
Okay. Did you look at any of the comments associated with Mr. Lum's article?
The comments on the article from Lori's cousin?
Yes.
Yes, I did.
Okay. Did you see anything in there that would affect your testimony today?
In my opinion, no.
Okay. And did you see any comments in there about trial testimony before Judge Boyce?
No.
Okay. Your Honor, does the court or have any other questions?
I don't have any further questions with that line of questioning you just went through. I will, however, allow the defense at this point to ask any further questions just on that narrow, limited scope of the issue of the exclusionary rule. I'm not sure which attorney would be conducting cross in this case for the witness, Mr. Archibald. All right, do you have any questions for Ms. Raymond on regards to the exclusionary rule before we get started with her testimony?
So this article that you started but didn't finish, you scrolled down to read the comments about the article?
Yes.
What were the comments saying?
I mean, in general, it was about the LDS Church's influence on the proceedings.
That was one comment. How about the other ones?
I mean, I didn't read every comment, just a handful of comments.
Oh, that's what you remember reading was people talking about the LDS Church?
Yes.
Anything else?
No.
In your exposure to what's happened here in this case, you've previously provided interviews for the media, is that right?
That's correct.
And has the media contacted you to do follow-up interviews?
Judge,
Yes.
I'm going to object. That's beyond the scope of this. I understand it's fair for cross in front of the jurors, but for this particular issue, I failed to see the relevance.
I'll sustain that. We're narrowed in scope right here to Idaho Rule of Evidence 615, which is just the exclusionary rule, which is narrow in scope as to whether any trial testimony has been observed.
So that was my question, whether being contacted by the media and to set up another interview with you if you've been told what's been going on in the case.
No, I have not.
So have you agreed to grant interviews to these media outlets?
Judge, again, I understand it's a question for regular cross, but as to the particular issues involving pretrial publicity or trial publicity exposure, it's beyond the scope.
It is. And at this point, unless there's any further indication the court satisfied the exclusionary rule would not have been violated by listening to any other witnesses' testimony in the case. So if you have any other questions just directly on that point, you can ask those now, and you'll have an opportunity for those other topics on cross, Mr. Archibald.
Well, I think my question does go to what reporters have told her if she's talked to them. So have you talked to them?
Yeah, and I'm going to object to vague. If we're talking about after the trial started rather than before, I still think it's not relevant. I think it's beyond the scope, but that question itself is, one, irrelevant, two, vague.
Well, I don't want to get too far afield here. I am going to overrule that objection, Mr. Archibald. If you can keep it narrowed to the scope of trial testimony and re-ask the question, I'll allow it.
Have you been contacted by interviewers, the media, reporters, about following up on previous interviews that you did with the media?
Yes, I have, and I've given them the directive from the prosecutor's office that was included in the subpoena that I received.
So you told them, I'll talk to you after the trial, but not before the trial?
I just sent them the directive and said I was not able to participate in any interviews at this time without any promise of any future interviews.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Counsel, thanks for going through that issue outside the presence of the jury. I think that was more appropriate. Without them hearing that issue, the court does not find there's any evidence there's been a violation of the exclusion of witness rule and the court's prior order enforcing that rule in the case. So at this time, we'll have the jurors brought in and allow for direct examination of the witness.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome.
And ma'am, while the jurors coming in, there's water right there if you need it. Okay. Thank you.
All rise, please.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bailiff. Please be seated. All right, the witness has been sworn. We can commence with direct examination. I'll just instruct the witness, please use verbal responses to any questions and avoid talking at the same time as anyone questioning you so we can keep the record clear in the case. With that in mind, then, Ms. Smith, you can conduct your direct examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon.
Hello.
Hello. Can you please introduce yourself to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury and spell your last name for the record, please?
Of course. So my name is April Raymond. My last name is spelled Raymond.
Okay. And ma'am, where do you live?
I live in Kilauea, Hawaii.
Okay. How long have you lived in Hawaii?
I've lived in Hawaii for 18 years.
Okay. Do you have any children?
I do. I have 2.
Okay. And do you know Lori Vallow?
I did know Lori Vallow, yes.
Okay. How did you know Lori Vallow?
We met as we were both members of the Hanalei branch.
Okay. When you say Hanalei branch, is that a part of the LDS church?
It is. It's a branch is a division smaller than a ward. There's not enough of population to have a ward, so we have branches.
Okay. Do you remember when you met her at the branch?
I do.
When was that?
2016.
Okay. And how was it you came to know her?
So we were introduced at church, and she had become the president of the primary organization and had asked me to be one of her counselors.
Okay. And did your relationship just stay at church, or did it progress into a friendship outside the church?
We did have a friendship outside of our auxiliary responsibilities, yes.
Okay. And what was the nature of that friendship?
Our children spent time together. We spent time in each other's homes, celebrated holidays together.
Did you get to know her daughter, Tylee?
I did.
Okay. Did you get to know her son, JJ?
I did.
Was her son, Colby, living in the home at the time?
Off and on. So he was there for a time, and then he was called on a mission, and then he was home again. So he wasn't there the entire time that the Vallows were there.
And during the time that you knew the defendant in Hawaii, did you know her spouse?
Yes.
What was her spouse's name at that time?
Charles Vallow.
Okay. How often did you see the defendant?
Charles worked from home a lot, so I would be at Lori's, and Charles would be there quite often. He would come to a lot of the activities we did with the children. He was a constant presence.
Okay, so you got to know Charles. How often would you see Lori?
We would get together maybe once or twice a week.
Okay. And what sort of things would you do?
We would go for walks together. She's a hairstylist, so she would color my hair. We would plan activities for the kids and go shopping in preparation for whatever we had planned for the next activity.
Next activity at church?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Did there come a time where the Vallows moved from Hawaii?
Yes.
Did you maintain your relationship with the defendant and her family?
To an extent, yes.
Okay. What do you mean to an extent?
We would stay in touch through phone calls or texts, and then an occasional visit.
Okay. Did one such a visit occur in late winter, early spring of 2019?
Yes.
Do you remember when that visit was?
I do. It was February of 2019.
Okay.
And it was the weekend before Valentine's Day.
Okay. How did that visit occur? Was it a planned visit?
No, it was a very unexpected one.
All right. Can you tell us about that visit?
I received a call from Lori that she and Tylee had landed in Kauai. She said that she was leaving Charles, had a lot to tell me. They were checking into their hotel, and that we would talk later.
Okay. And did you talk later?
We did.
All right. How did that happen?
She reached out to me. They needed a place to stay. I offered my home as an option, and her and Tylee came to stay with me the following day.
All right. Did you have a chance to talk to her about her situation back home?
Yes.
And when I say back home, in February of 2019, where did you understand from the defendant, Lori Vallow, that she was living?
In Arizona.
Okay. Did she talk to you about what was going on in her home in Arizona?
Yes, she said that a lot had changed. She said that her and Charles were going to be getting divorced, that Charles had an affair. And then the conversation changed to where Charles wasn't Charles, that Charles was a demon named Ned Snyder. And the conversation just kind of evolved from there.
Okay. So there's a lot in that answer, so let me make sure I understand. You had a conversation that they were getting separated or they were divorcing?
Initially, yes.
Okay. Who was visiting with Lori Vallow when she was at your home at this time?
Tylee was with her.
Where was JJ?
JJ was with Charles, was my understanding.
Okay. And did the defendant say why she didn't bring JJ?
She said that she was done with JJ and that Charles and his sister Kay would need to figure it out.
Okay. And what did you understand that meant done with JJ meant?
Taken into the context of she's going through a divorce, I took it to mean that if they went through a divorce, that Tylee would go with Lori and Charles would take on the responsibility of JJ exclusively, was my understanding.
Okay. And during this, you also mentioned that she talked about that Charles was no longer Charles.
Yes.
All right. What did she say about that?
In terms of?
When she said Charles was no longer Charles, how was that connected to her talking about separating from Charles?
Sure. So she had said that Charles was already dead and that there was a demon living inside him and kind of using his body as a host, and that the demon's name was Ned Snyder.
Did you follow up on that? Did she give you any sort of evidence of this?
When I asked, how do you know that it's not Charles, she said, because he's shorter.
And did she ever talk to you about that relationship in any other settings?
As far as?
Her relationship with Charles. I'm sorry, it's been a long day. Let me ask you a better question.
Yeah, I'm not sure
Did she have any other conversations with you about Charles at any other locations other than at your home?
During that visit?
During that visit.
It wasn't that week that she stayed with me.
Was there another conversation later?
Yes.
Okay. Was there any other conversations about Charles that week she stayed with you?
Yes.
Tell us about the conversation that occurred that week she stayed with you.
So during that week, apparently Charles didn't know that she was in Hawaii.
And why do you say that?
Because that's what she told me. And she said that if Charles reached out, to not tell him where she was, and that he had a private investigator kind of following her, and that she had led him to believe that she was going to be in Idaho for a conference, and that he was going to be having her served with papers in Idaho.
What type of papers?
I assumed they were divorce papers.
Okay. Any other conversations that week they were in staying with you in Hawaii that you can recall?
Not really anything more than what we've already discussed.
Okay. And earlier you indicated there had been additional conversations. Did they stay with you the entire time they were in Hawaii?
No, they did not.
Okay. So after that week they were with you, where did they go?
Kauai Beach Resort.
Okay. And did you have contact with Lori Vallow while she was staying at the Kauai Beach Resort?
I did.
Okay. What contact was that?
So it was later in the month, and she had been joined by Melanie Gibb. And so Melanie Gibb and Lori and I went out several evenings. Once we went out for an afternoon lunch and then a couple evenings for dinner.
Okay. Where was Tylee at this time?
At this time, Tylee was, my understanding was she was back in Arizona working at her aunt's chiropractic clinic.
Okay. And was JJ now in Hawaii?
No.
Okay. Did you see JJ at all during the time the defendant was in Hawaii in February or March of 2019?
No.
Okay. And so you said you saw her a couple of more times with Melanie Gibb present.
Yes.
Okay. Can you think of, you mentioned a lunch. Where was the lunch?
We had lunch at a restaurant in Honolulu called Calypso.
Okay. And during that lunch, did the conversation of Charles come up?
Yes.
Or did the conversation turn to Charles?
Yes.
All right. And how was that conversation? What was that specifically about?
It was
Charles.
It was, a combination of things. There was Charles had sent an email to Lori's family, kind of pleading for help, and she showed me the email and just again asked me not to respond to Charles if he reached out.
Okay. And was there another conversation about Charles and communications with him at one of the dinners you attended?
The conversation about Charles was more about now Melanie had joined the conversation and was kind of confirming what Lori was saying, that Charles wasn't
Charles. And
Charles.
I'll object to hearsay from Melanie Gibb.
Well, Your Honor, I'm not offering it for the truth of the matter story that Charles was in fact possessed by a demon. I'm offering it to show context to what the defendant said in relation.
So the objection is overruled.
Thank you. So I'm sorry. What did Melanie say?
Do you mind repeating the question just so
Sure.
I make sure I understand?
At the dinner that you attended, where you and Melanie Gibb and Lori were present, how did the conversation with Charles, or her relationship with Charles, come up?
The incident was brought up about Charles coming back from the airport where his car had been taken, his flight had been canceled, and just how angry he was about that taking place.
So when you say the incident, what does that mean?
So there was an incident where Charles had been on a business trip, and Lori had discovered evidence of him having an affair, and as a reaction or a retaliation, canceled his flight, canceled his credit card, and moved his truck from the airport parking lot, and just kind of how that all unfolded and his reaction to that.
Okay. And so did Lori Vallow tell you about that?
Yes.
Okay. Did Melanie Gibb corroborate that conversation?
Yes.
Okay. In fact, did Ms. Gibb indicate who helped Lori in this?
I don't remember exactly.
Okay. So during this conversation at the dinner, did anything else come up about the Lori Vallow's relationship with Charles Vallow?
Melanie was just confirming what Lori had told me about Charles being possessed by a demon.
Okay. Now, during these various conversations, did the defendant ever talk to you about participating in the formation of the 144,000 who are supposed to shepherd in the second coming of Christ?
Yes, that was a conversation the first night that she stayed with me, when it was just she and Tylee.
Okay. And what did Lori Vallow say to you about that?
She said that she had been appointed leader of one of the 144,000, and that she was there to gather me.
And what did you understand gather you meant?
To join her.
Okay. And what did she say was going to be needed for you to do in order to join her in this group?
That I would need to be separated from my children.
Okay. Did she indicate why?
Basically that my children were raised, I'd fulfilled my role in their lives, and that I had a greater calling, a greater mission to perform with her.
Okay. And did she indicate that what you should do with your kids?
Basically just leave them with their father.
Okay. If I may have one moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. I have nothing further. Thanks, Judge.
All right, Mr. Archibald, cross-examination.
So Lori was in Hawaii, lived there a year or two in 2016, 2017?
Correct.
And that's, you still live there?
Mm-hmm, I do.
And you two were friends and fellow church members?
Yes, sir.
And you say you had some kids. How old were they back then?
Well, now I'd have to do the math, but they're 17 and 18 now.
Okay. So, yeah. So maybe 10 and 12 around there.
Yes, sir.
So during this visit in February of 2019, you were getting caught up with your old friend Lori.
Yes, sir.
And had you noticed a change in her belief system?
Yes.
So when you two were serving in your church together, did she believe in multiple lives or multiple creations?
Not to my knowledge.
Did she mention that in February of 2019?
Yes.
And did you ask her why she was changing her belief system?
I don't know that I specifically asked her that question, but it was my understanding that her belief system had changed because of this group that she had recently become a part of.
Okay. And so previously, when she lived in Hawaii with you in 2016-17, she didn't have any what would call out of the norm beliefs about Jesus.
Not from my observation, no.
And then in February of 2019, you noticed that her beliefs about Jesus had changed.
They started to change a little bit prior to that. There was a visit before that 2019 visit in July of 2018, and that's the first time, but that was after she had moved to Arizona. But that was the first time. And then the visit in 2019, the beliefs were more amplified than before.
Okay. So in July of 2018, where did you two visit?
At Quiet Beach Resort.
Okay, so that was also in Hawaii.
Yes, sir.
And in 2018 or 2019, did she start to talk about multiple lives, being someone else in a previous life?
Yes.
And did you believe in that?
No.
And did the church that you two attended together, is that what they taught?
No.
Did she, in July of 18 or February of 19, did she start to talk about zombies?
Not in 2018, but in 2019.
Okay. And is that something that you two had previously talked about in Hawaii in 2016?
No.
So that was something new as well.
Yes.
How about casting out evil spirits? Did Lori have that new belief that she had some power to do that?
Not that she shared with me.
Okay. In July of 18 or February of 19, did you talk about castings?
No.
Okay. How about a light and dark scales? Did you ever hear that, or did she talk to you about that?
Yes.
And when was that?
In 2019, at my home.
Okay. And did you think that was unusual?
Yes.
Certainly something that you two had never talked about when you lived in Hawaii previously in 2016.
That's correct.
Did she tell you in 2019 that she was a goddess?
Yes.
And what was your reaction to that?
I just tried to not react and just listen to her.
You mentioned that she said she was a leader of the 144,000. That happened in the February of 2019?
Yes, sir.
And had she ever mentioned that in 2016?
Not in 2016, but in 2018.
Okay. And did you ask her where she was starting, or why she was starting to change her beliefs?
Yes, and it was that she had had some experiences in the LDS temple that had changed her view of herself and her life. And then she had found these, like, a group of like-minded individuals who had also had those same experiences.
And did you, when she was telling you that, did you believe it?
No.
And did you tell her that?
Yes.
And what was her response to you?
I don't think she was upset. I think my impression was she just thought I wasn't ready to hear it, maybe.
Okay. Did she talk to you about setting up a new church called the Church of the Firstborn?
No.
When you two, you say you served together in a branch in Hawaii. Is that in 2016, 2017?
Yes.
And what organization was that?
It's called the Primary.
And the Primary is for children?
Children 12 and under.
And so, what did you and Lori spend time in Primary teaching children?
So you would teach from scriptures. She has a strong background in music, so she, did a lot of music time with the children. We planned activities for during the week, holiday parties. We usually had one activity a week, and then the services on Sunday that we would plan and participate in.
And so for these activities and for the lessons for these children under the age of 12, were they taught about Jesus?
Yes.
And were they taught that Jesus was good?
Yes.
Were these children taught that Jesus healed sick people?
Yes.
Were they taught that Jesus cast out evil spirits?
Perhaps. I don't recall specifically.
Okay. But just simple lessons about the love of God and how we need to be good people.
Yes.
That was the subject of the lessons in 2016.
Yes.
And so, with your friend, 3 years later, you'd noticed that her focus wasn't on that anymore; it was on other things.
Yes.
And did you know Melanie Gibb before she came and joined you that one time in Hawaii?
No, that was the first time I met her.
And was she, in her belief system, she was similar to Lori?
Yes.
From the statements that Melanie and Lori were telling you about their new beliefs, were Melanie and Lori on the same page with that?
Yes.
And they asked you to join?
I think it was kind of like a subtle grooming is how I would describe it, just kind of testing the water to see my reaction. But I could feel that the ultimate goal was to include me.
Okay. And your response was no thanks?
Not interested.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Mr. Archibald, that then concludes the cross-examination. Does the state have any redirect?
Very briefly, Your Honor.
Very well.
Sorry, adjusting it. Mr. Archibald's taller than I am. Ma'am, on cross-examination, you mentioned this group that she was a part of.
Yes.
Was it your understanding she was one of the leaders of this group?
I didn't know the hierarchy or the leadership that I'm referring to as being a leader in gathering the 144,000. The group that I'm referring to is the podcast group that was described to me.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that distinction is necessary.
Okay. This podcast group, who was in it?
The names that I was told were Zulema Pastenes, Melanie Gibb, Jason Mao, Thor, I don't remember his last name, Chad Daybell.
Okay. The individuals in this podcast group, were they also committed to this mission in helping form and pull together the 144,000?
That was my understanding of how it was explained to me, yes.
And that was explained to you by Lori Vallow?
Yes.
Nothing further. Thank you, Your Honor.
This is an examination of the hidden human condition
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast.
with Tony Bruschi.
Of course, have full courtroom audio for you at the end of the day as soon as we get it from the court. So you can listen to every moment in the trial of Lori Vallow Daybell right here. My name's Tony Bruschi. Press subscribe wherever you download podcasts so you don't miss any of it. Stay with us.